Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. Hope you guys are all doing well. Made it to a Friday, and it's March 12th, 2021. And, this is a significant day for a lot of reasons. And thinking back a year today, the NHL shut down. It was a year ago yesterday where Rudy Gobert, the Utah Jazz, were on the floor, and we found out that Rudy Gobert, the center for the Utah Jazz, had tested positive for COVID-19. And after his positive test, there was a game in Oklahoma City that was supposed to start quickly thereafter. That was postponed, and that it really shifted the sports landscape. Like I said, a year ago today, the NHL reacted. They canceled the season. We saw Indian Wells, the tennis tournament, that got shut down. The Miami Open was quickly shut down. And then for months, we did not see sports. Thinking it's been a year since that day. A year Saturday, or a year tomorrow. So yeah, a year tomorrow. I had my last in-person class at university. I finished my year doing schoolwork at my apartment by myself in Fredericton, quarantining or what have you. And, it's just crazy to think back. I think it's been a year. In that, I'm thinking where we are now, and it's kind of made me be a bit introspective. That March to end of May stretch was one of the worst couple months of my life. Losing my grandparents was obviously the worst time period of my life, but I'm thinking just as personal, and share your kind of thoughts in the comments. It sounds so juvenile and so childlike, but sports are so important to me. They have been since I was 2 years old. I would watch hockey games and jump in front of the TV, not knowing what the hell they were doing. But sports is what makes me me. And I had that ripped away from me abruptly. And I'm sure over this calendar year, people have different hobbies. People have different things that they go to for fun. It could be the gym. It could be going to a movie. I mean, I know I really enjoy going to a movie. Haven't been able to do that. There's so many different things that I'm missing right now, that it's just your comfort, right? You go to that when you want an escape. And, on March 12th, sports stopped. And I think back to those days, it was a Friday at my last in-person class, and I had no sports to watch that weekend, but I couldn't go see anybody. It was just such a strange time. And, I can't believe it's been a year. Sometimes it feels, like it's been longer. Sometimes it feels like it hasn't even been, a couple months. But, the fact that we have sports back is obviously such a blessing for me now that we can do normal things in society, and it seems to be getting better. But, seeing that this week, listening to an interesting interview with Dan Patrick on his show Wednesday with Scott Van Pelt, who's a Sportsnet anchor for the Mothership. He was there that night when they had to talk about Gobert. Nobody knew what COVID was. Nobody knew what was going to do to professional sports. I think the NHL shut down. They're expecting to play games in 1 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks. Then we see teams starting to cancel, and life as we know it was completely flipped. And we thinking of that, NBA ended March 11th. The NHL stopped March 12th. We did not see a team sport in North America until July 25th. That was when the NBA bubble started. It was that long, that period of time. The UFC started golf. There were solo events, some tennis, but there was no team sports. Soccer started a little even after the NBA did, playing in Germany. It was that long without seeing a team sport. Think about it. If hockey, you can be a fan of sports. If hockey ends, baseball still. You got baseball for 3 months, right? You got soccer in the summertime. You got other stuff that you watch, you have to take up your time. If football ends, you still have hockey and basketball. There was nothing. From March until May, there was no live sports. In May, the UFC got going. Then we saw golf start in early June at the Colonial. And I'm just thinking of that, and I don't know how I got through it. I kind of give myself a pat in the back today because, as childish as it sounds, sports is what makes me me, and it's the most, other than my close, personal relationships with family and friends, it's the most important aspect of my life by a quarter mile. I love it. And I remember watching countless documentaries over this time period. I watched the Michael Vick documentary. Thank God for The Last Dance, because that was just riveting. Obviously the Jordan documentary. Yeah, I watched Vic. I watched Michael Jordan. I watched one on the Michigan with the Fab Five. It kind of made you look back and appreciate the greats. I watched a ton of old NBA Finals games, with Larry Bird and Michael Jordan, and that was interesting. But I'm not going to dwell on this all podcast, but it's just crazy that it's been a year really since. And sports really marked the calendar for when we as North Americans really started to have to shift our lives, because it made everybody think, okay, they're not playing sports. Well, we can't do a lot of this stuff either. And, wearing masks, the grocery store really was the only thing open for a period of time. It was a cosmic shift. And I just thought I'd bring that up this morning because, when I saw that, and I was hearing about it this week, it's just crazy that it's been that long. But kudos to all of us. We got through a year. If I'm saying the same thing in a year's time, well, we got a big fucking problem here. But vaccines, whatever else, hopefully it's coming on the horizon. Obviously it's going to be a slower process with everybody, Canada pumping out only about 12 a day right now. But I just wanted to bring that up because it's crazy that has been this long, and hopefully we never have to go through anything like this again. But things are starting to come along. The Moncton Wildcats played with fans last night for the first time since December. Hockey, you can attend sporting events in a limited capacity. Obviously south of the border, they got different protocols. I mean, the Texas Rangers may have a full house for their first game of the season. That's obviously going to get a reaction from people that are, against having fans when it comes to, spreading COVID and whatnot. But I'm not going to get into that right now because I'll take the contrarian argument that nobody wants to hear. So, but we got through a year. So kudos to everybody. Everybody's had their struggles through this. And for me, just getting to watch hockey, basketball, the whole entire NFL season, which was fantastic. Curling, amateur athletics in curling, getting to do that right now is pretty fantastic. So, and obviously golf and everything else, but I'm never going to take sports for granted again. I don't think I ever have. It's always been, the safety net that's always there when I need it. But, a year ago today, there was no hockey. Last night we had plenty of action, a lot of interesting storylines that I'm going to get to today. And I thought I'd tee it off by talking about, Maple Leafs and Jets. There was a bunch of interesting games last night. I'm going to talk about the Philadelphia Flyers and their goaltending situation. I don't like beating up on people, but if you continue to shit your pants, I'm going to have to. But Leafs Jets last night. Leafs get the win in overtime. I don't think that's the bigger story of the game. I think they've played better than Winnipeg in the two matchups this week. They should have got 2 points last night, but they fall asleep and give the Jets one. So I'm going to mark them one for that. But in the broad scheme here, I think these two teams are so similarly built, and I think they have a key problem on both teams that they're going to have to address. Obviously, they play each other with the lineups as they are right now. One team is going to win the series, but I think both teams need to address an issue, and it's an issue that a lot of teams have, and that's the defensive core. First goal of the game, on the Dubois steal, I got to point it out, Travis Dermott, he's been in Toronto long enough where they've given him enough looks, and it tells you a lot that he makes bad plays game after game, and yet he continues to play. So that tells you Mikko Lehtinen, who was this highly touted player that they signed from Russia with Barabanov, who's played 5 minutes in the league this year. Obviously, they have no faith in Mikko Lehtinen, because if Mikko Lehtinen was any good, he'd be playing and Dermott wouldn't be, point blank. And for everybody saying play Rasmus Sandin, he's injured. So that's not an option. Also, if Rasmus Sandin was so good, he'd be in the lineup over Travis Dermott, because it's not that hard to be better than Travis Dermott. Let's just be fair here. So big problem there for Toronto. And again, I said the same thing in Winnipeg. They lost Nathan Beaulieu last night. So they're on Tuesday, fractured his hand, blocking a shot. Their decor was thin to begin with. Beaulieu is a third pair defenseman. I think Tucker Poolman's closer to a third pair defenseman right now. Pionk, I think he's one of the more underrated players in the Canadian division. I think Morrissey's played some good hockey this year. But, Logan Stanley has to come in the lineup. He's not an NHL defenseman. He's really big, and, that can kind of be deceiving. When you see a huge guy on the ice, he's like, oh, he's so big, you don't really watch him play. He's a bad skater, doesn't really have great vision, turned a lot of pucks over last night, not strong for how big he is. So he's not a viable option. So for both of these teams, I like how they're built. You look at Toronto, you got Matthews, Marner. They're playing with Jumbo right now. I don't think that's a fit long term. I mean, you see on the first goal of the game for Toronto, who creates that goal? Zach Hyman. And I truly believe this. I was talking to my parents last night. I don't think Matthews wants to play with Hyman. I don't get it. And they got broke up a few years ago, and that would not be because Mike Babcock did not want Hyman on the top line. If you're a Leaf fan, you hear media pressers, you know how much Mike Babcock loved Zach Hyman, raved about his work ethic. He kissed his ass more than anybody. I think Zach is the third most important forward on the Maple Leafs right now. He's more important than Bill. He's more important than John. Should John be the third most important forward? Absolutely. When it comes to consistent play, Zach Hyman's their third best forward. Better than Bill, better than John. Name a guy. He's more important than them because he brings it night in, night out. I can't say the same for John, Bill, Kerfoot, whoever the hell else you want to throw in there. So, top line, left wing for Toronto, I think you got to put Hyman there. And this is how I kind of view it for Toronto. Adding to their decor is essential. And who's that going to be? And that's obviously the big question. Looking around the league, you're going to have to find some teams that I look at a team like Detroit. They're obviously terrible. They're hoping to finish last, get the first pick in the draft. A guy they signed last year to a 2-year deal. He's got another year after this one, so they could probably get more for him in a trade. It's Troy Stetcher. Troy Stetcher, again, Leafs fans, the names I say are not going to be quote-unquote sexy. It's not going to be a game changer. You should have a good enough team to win. If you don't, it's your problem. Troy Stetcher is a 4 to 6 defenseman, but you don't need a game breaker. I look at their decor. Riley's Riley. Again, I'm not the biggest Morgan Riley fan, but he does his job. He played great last night for the most part. I think he tries to do too much often, and that gets him into trouble. But, he's pretty good. TJ Brody, having a fantastic season. And one big reason he's having a fantastic season is because you don't hear about him. Believe me, if you play in Toronto, you hear everything because there's got to be a story about every little player and every little play you do on the ice. You don't hear anything about TJ Brody. And that's the perfect defenseman. That's what you want because he since that second game against Ottawa, where he was a tire fire, he's been quiet, and that's perfect. He's not going to be a Norris Trophy winning defenseman. He's not going to put up a whole lot of points, be a game changer. But is he going to be solid? Is he going to do his job? Let Riley make some mistakes, cover for him, and be in the right position? Yes. Check mark. I'll take him. Muzzin's just your, again, solid second pair guy. Play a ton of penalty kill minutes. Be physical. Bring an edge that Toronto needs because they still lack it. And be responsible in his own zone. Make good decisions. Check. Hall's had a great season. The past 5 to 10 games, I don't think he's played very well. He's trying to do too much. Hall, you have significant limitations on what you can do as a defenseman. Be good at what you can do. Don't worry about what you can't. Just, do the old Michael Scott, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And I think that's what Justin Hall needs to do here. Then you go to Bogosian. I think Bogosian's been really good. Opening night, looked slow, didn't look ready. Since then, he's been a fine 5 defenseman. Again, you don't hear his name. That's Toronto. Again, Toronto players, you hear your name, whether you're great, you stink, or you even shouldn't be talked about. Replacing Dermott with a guy like Stetcher to play with Bogosian is a better option. He's not going to be a game breaker. If you're just a casual fan, you probably don't even know who I'm talking about. He played with Vancouver till this past year. He's got another year in his deal, so he may have to give up a little more for him, but he's better than Dermott. I mean, that's point blank, just to dumb it down a little bit. If you're Toronto and you want to make a bigger splash, there's this guy in Buffalo named Rasmus Ristolainen. He's played the Leafs over the years. He's been a really good player playing against the Leafs, oddly enough. He's a guy that would intrigue me if I was Toronto. I think his price would be high. But, you're going all in here. This is the year. You're not playing Tampa. You're not playing Boston until the conference final. You're playing against the All-Canadian division. You think you're the best team in the division. You should feel confident. Go win it. Another guy and Winnipeg, I think, has the same issue. They need to address their decor. So all these guys could go either way. A guy for Winnipeg I would love on their back end is Brandon Montour. He also plays in the Buffalo Sabres. He was originally drafted by the Anaheim Ducks, had a lot of high potential. He's a first-round pick. He hasn't turned out to be the elite player that they thought they were getting, and obviously trading him to Buffalo tells you that. But he still moves the puck really well. He's got a good shot. He can play some power play minutes. He's got an edge to his game. I think you'd fit the Jets mold. They're a team that's built on skill, but they have some bite too. You look at Nick Ehlers last night, 3 points, but he's a little junkyard dog. I love the way Nick Ehlers has played this year, having a fantastic season for the Winnipeg Jets. But I think I look at those are just some guys that come up to the top of my head of teams, players that could be available on teams that are, quote unquote tanking, looking for different options, looking to acquire draft capital, because it was announced this week that the draft is going to stay in July. So this year's draft, crop of draft picks are going to be taken. So, it was rumored it could be pushed back another year. It's not going to be. So trading a first round pick is trading a first round pick for July. So you're going to see that talent. You're going to see that draft pick come to your organization, at the end of July rather than, June 2022. I mean, that's a little bit different when you're trading it. So, there's also, potentially out west, if San Jose eats some salary, could you take a swing at a Brent Burns? He's got a lot of years left, but San Jose wants to get rid of, they got some big contracts they got Carlson and Burns and Vlasic on the back end that are eating at their salary cap, eating at their potential success moving forward. Would a team like Winnipeg, would a team like Toronto find a way to make that deal work? So these are just I think both teams are really close. I think they're, they've played this year played 3 times. Toronto's 1-1, Winnipeg's 1-1. Toronto wins again, but Winnipeg gets a point. So it's been really close when it comes to these two teams. I think Hellebuck is a top 2 goalie in the league. What would worry me for Toronto, and again, it's Hellebuck hasn't done it in the playoffs yet either. But we've seen Freddie Anderson in the playoffs. Has he come up small in games? You bet. That Liam Foudy goal last year in Game 5 against Columbus, shot from the corner, that can't go in. So I look at this team, Winnipeg making a few adds. You got a Vezina Trophy winner in net, and then you got Freddie Anderson, who's a lame duck, who's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. How does he look? How does he feel going into the playoffs? Would worry me a little bit. So, but another great game came down to the wire. I think the Leafs threw away a point, so they got to be a little bit upset about that. But a nice goal by Austin Matthews in overtime. Obviously now I'm sure the Hart Trophy race is his to lose now. Now that he's scored a couple goals here in back-to-back games, but I'll let other people have that discussion, and I think he's in the top 5. I don't think he's in the top 3 for the Hart right now. That's just one man's opinion. Last night, another all-Canadian matchup, Flames-Canadiens. This was Daryl Sutter's first game behind the bench for the Flames. Flames hadn't played since losing to Ottawa on Sunday. Montreal had just come off a 5-1 win over Ottawa Wednesday night. So they're on a back-to-back. Jake Allen got the start. And couple things from Calgary in this game. They win 2-1. They get depth scoring. Josh Levo's got 3 goals in his last 2 games. Derek Ryan getting assists on both. So we didn't see the big boys come to play yet for Calgary under Daryl Sutter. But a couple players that really stood out to me that I'm like, okay, they're going to have bigger impacts. Obviously, Sam Bennett was in the lineup. That's one thing. But Daryl didn't play a ton of his forwards. He didn't play his horses a ton. Matthew Tkachuk only played 13 minutes and 42 seconds last night. He rolled his lines, but playing against a Montreal team that likes to do that, and they don't have high potency of offensive players, you can have that option to do it. Also, Milan Lucic, I think, wanted to prove a point to his coach. A great fight last night between, 2 guys I have a high level of respect for. Milan Lucic and Josh Anderson, the unicorn, dropped the gloves with Lucic, the biggest heavyweight in the NHL, in my opinion. And good for Josh. Josh is a hell of a player. I love him. But Lucic, he hasn't been afraid to stick up for teammates all season long. He's trying to get the Flames motivated. And this is a big game. With a loss, Calgary would have trailed Montreal by 7 points in the standings. So this keeps them in the fight. But another key thing is Chris Tanev. Chris Tanev was a longtime Vancouver Canuck, a defenseman that didn't get a lot of credit because he played with the superstar, but he kept the superstar grounded, and he made them look better maybe than they were most nights. Last night he played 24 minutes and 42 seconds. The next closest defenseman played 20:52, and that was Noah Hanifin, his normal defense partner. Down the stretch, the last 7 minutes, Tanev barely came off the ice. To preserve a lead, Daryl Sutter went with the guy he trusted the most. And I think this tells you a lot about Daryl and tells you a lot about Chris Tanev. He's going to have to earn respect like every player under Daryl, of course. But he's a guy that's earned a lot in this league by just being a good person, doing it the right way, so to speak. But for Tanev, coming out, playing the way he did, playing a ton of minutes, that's only going to give him more confidence with Daryl. And, the Flames Canadiens meet again Saturday. But those are just a few things that I really noticed. He didn't play his forwards a ton. Didn't play anybody more than he really had to. But, Hanifin's not an offensive defenseman. He's probably a 3-4. But you got Tanev paired with him. So, it might tell him they're moving away from Rasmus Anderson playing with Tanev. I think Rasmus Anderson has a ton of potential to be a really good defenseman in this league, but he's not a top pair defenseman yet. And, credit to Daryl Sutter for not doing what some really stupid coaches do and say, well, we have this highly rated, touted prospect. We got to put him in our top D pair. No, you don't. If You don't, because you can play your 3D pairs equal minutes, split it up. Like Toronto playing Dion Phaneuf as much as they did back in the day, they didn't have to do it. When they got Morgan Riley the past couple of years, him playing 25, 20, 27 minutes a night, it didn't work because you didn't win. Maybe Daryl will move away from this. I think Tanev playing 25 minutes a night, he'll wear out. I don't think that'll happen every night. But you got a 2-1 game. I don't blame him at all. I think it's the smartest decision you can make. You get Tanev on the ice as often as you can because he's going to preserve the lead. He's going to get you closer to a win and, as opposed to a loss. And so good for Tanev. And I think he's going to be a quiet leader on this team. Obviously, this team, they got Giordano back there. He's the captain. But Tanev, even though it's his first season, I think he's going to have a major impact on if this team can turn it around. For the likes of Gaudreau, Monahan, Tanev's a guy who's been in wars. He's been in playoff series. He went to the Stanley Cup final with the Canucks in 2011. He knows what it takes to win. And I think Daryl's looking at him as kind of a guy to lean on as he moves forward here. But Daryl Sutter gets his first win as a Flames head coach since 2006. So cool for him to come back. Good to see him behind a bench. And obviously these two teams will be back at it again on Saturday. So keep posted on that. Then moving to the Central Division, this has really been such a strange, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the past few years have been a team that's been, really under-talented. When it comes to having elite players, they haven't had them, or they've had them and they've left. Artemi Panarin was a Columbus Blue Jacket. He moved on. Sergei Bobrovsky was a Columbus Blue Jacket. He moved on. They had Matt Duchene as a rental. Ryan Dzingel, to a lesser extent, moved on. Ryan Johansson, good trade, moved on. But they've had some really good players depart from Columbus. And to the narrative that really good players don't like to play in Columbus, I think that's lazy. I don't think that's all true. I think I mentioned two guys on that list being Russian players. Well, if you look at the history of the NHL, Russians really like New York and Florida. So you can look back at where these players ended up playing, and you can come back and tell me, Noah, you were probably right. But when it comes to Columbus this year, Columbus proper, they've been a disaster. Korpisalo, Merzlikins, not been great. Seth Jones, a guy I think he's the second best defenseman in the NHL. And there's Hedman, there's Jones, and then there's everybody else. The third place is not close to me. He hasn't had a great season. The team hasn't. They are having a tough time scoring. They trade Max Domi for Josh Anderson. Terrible trade. I thought at the time, I said, Montreal made a great move. Josh Anderson's a unicorn. He just had shoulder surgery. He'll come back. He'll be great. To date, Max Domi trade's been a flat out disaster for Columbus. Their goaltending has been great. Pierre-Luc Dubois wants to leave the team. Since acquiring Laine, he's been hit and miss. Prior to last night, no points in 7 games. But last night, really, I'll be interested to see what happens today, because there could be an announcement today that John Tortorella is fired. I don't think that's the right move if I'm Jarmo Kekalainen. I think John Tortorella will be hired again. If he's fired, he deserves that. What he's done with this Columbus team, he's won the Jack Adams Award twice as Coach of the Year. And I still think he's one of the best interviews. So I want him back in the game. And if he's not an old school coach, because he's adapted and he's gotten this team to go farther than they ever should have. But the lack of talent is catching up with them. You got, Nick Foligno's having to play center. He's a right winger. That's not going to work. Texier's a good player. He's not an elite player, though. Cam Atkinson, it's dried up for him. Oliver Bjorkstrand is a solid player. But again, it's just fundamentals this year. Last night, they have a 4-1 lead in the third period. Max Domi scores a .442 into the third period. It's 4-1. The game looks like it's completely over. I'm kind of flipping between that one and Toronto. And then all of a sudden, I just see, just craziness. You see Ryan Lomberg. Ever heard of him? Scored his first goal of the season. He's kind of a depth guy, fourth line guy. Scores. I'm okay. Well, it's 4-2, whatever. Then I turn back and I see Owen Tippett get a good wrister. Couple guys in front of Merzlikins, beats him 4-3. Then Columbus takes a stupid penalty. You see Huberdeau, Yandel, beautiful cross ice, tape to tape, just picture perfect to Barkov, power play goal, 4-4. I'm like, are you kidding me with Columbus? Like, this is happening again. Torts is losing it on the bench. And it's at this point, he's benched Patrick Laine. Patrick Laine does not play in the last 5 minutes, did not play in overtime. And, the first time he kind of took it on the chin. This time he said, I thought I was playing pretty well, but I guess not. It had a different tone to it when, he was addressed after the game, about his benching. And I'll get to that in a minute, but they end up losing in overtime. Frank Vetrano taps in a Huberdeau shot. Columbus just chokes away a lead, just like they did to Toronto last year in Game 4. And, Chicago wins last night too. Just another side point. Chicago beats Dallas. 2 points by Patrick Kane, Hart Trophy. But now they trail Chicago for the last playoff spot in the Central by 7 points. And they played the same amount of games. Yikes. But Torts and Patrick Laine, I'm thinking Kekalainen, again, I would not fire Torts but if I'm Jarmo, I got to think about my job too. He's been there a while. He's had Torts. Is Laine going to re-sign in Columbus with John Tortorella re-signed? He's a lame duck coach this year. He could be just let go. Will Laine re-sign in Columbus knowing that John Tortorella is going to be his head coach for the next, 2 to 5 years? I don't know. You're benched twice in your first month as a Blue Jacket. He got a goal last night in the power play. That was his first goal in 9 games. Patrick Laine hasn't been good enough as a pro. Since being drafted second overall, I don't think he's committed to fitness. I don't think he's committed to his game, his teammates, caring enough. But we all know in pro sports, players are going to get the benefit of the doubt over a head coach, general manager, executive every time. And Patrick Laine is not going to be the exception to the rule. Torts, even though Torts has earned it more in Columbus to stay there, winning playoff series, beating the Tampa Bay Lightning, the President's Trophy, the most regular season points in NHL history, sweeping them. But Columbus has lost stars. Panarin and Bobrovsky, I won't go through the list again. But to lose another one, and it's not because Columbus is a dump, like I said, but to lose another one when it comes to PR and just optically, it's going to kill the organization because our draft picks are going to want to come to Columbus. What if they tail off and they get a first overall pick? Are they going to come to Columbus? It's that fear. And could they get anybody to come sign? The one way you can get maybe people to come sign playing Columbus is you have Patrick Laine to dangle in front of them saying, we got a guy who can score 50 goals, come pass on the puck. But I just think it's a slippery slope here because maybe it's at the end of the year if they miss the playoffs. They'll just say we're not going to renew his contract. He was in the last year anyway. We're going to let him walk. But then they got Laine, who's going to be an unrestricted free agent. You got to get him signed, or you lose him for nothing. And then Pierre-Luc Dubois goes to Winnipeg. Gets a couple points last night. Looks really good playing with Ehlers and Connor. That trade looks like a flat-out disaster. It becomes a Johansson for Seth Jones deal, just the opposite way for Columbus in this sense. So again, I keep my ears open because if John Tortorella was fired today, I think that would be a terrible decision. But this is hockey. Guys get scared. Guys get desperate. And they may feel like it's time to make a change and just say, well, we needed to do something different. We need a new voice. We're trailing Chicago by 7 points. They're in desperation mode now. There's 30 games left. You got to win. You played the same amount of games. Chicago Blackhawks should not be leading you in points. And you're not going to catch anybody else because Carolina has the second most points in the NHL, 1 point behind Toronto, with a couple of games in hand. They surpassed Tampa last night, losing to Detroit. Florida continues to win. Your one hope is to catch Chicago, and they just find ways to win. And, for Columbus, they lost to Dallas twice last weekend. You're losing after getting a 4-1 lead. That can't happen right now. So maybe it's time to make a change. But I think if they do, it's more about the future than this season. Because turning around this season, an assistant coach who's been an assistant coach on the staff, because I can't see Columbus making an outside hire mid-season and having him quarantine, come in and coach for 22 games. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's gonna be a guy on John Tortorella's bench, and he's not gonna be the long-term answer. So it's more about firing Tortorella to appease the players that you have now and hoping that maybe other free agents will come to your organization. It's a dangerous precedent, but it wouldn't shock me if it was implemented. That's what's happening in Columbus. Not a great situation there right now. The East Division. We look at every night. Seems like there's a couple divisions, and then like tonight's Friday, the West Division. Every team plays. Then there's one Canadian division team playing with Edmonton and in Ottawa. But quietly, the New York Islanders were terrible to start the season. Varlamov got injured. Sorokin was a little bit iffy in net. Saw some inconsistent play. They weren't scoring any goals. Nelson, Bolivier, guys weren't producing. Dobson on the back end really wasn't playing that well. But quietly, the Islanders have won 12 of their last 14 games. It's pretty incredible. They still have that roster where I thought they would make the playoffs this year. I had them missing. But Barry Trotz continues to prove that he's one of, if not the best coach in the NHL with this roster. I mean, Matt Martin has 5 goals. He scores last night. They get goals from Clutterbuck, Cizikas. They have a team that outworks you night in, night out. And also, Semyon Varlamov's been really good. Since leaving Colorado, Varlamov's been a really solid goaltender in the NHL. And he's been good. Sorokin, he's another guy who's played in the KHL for a long time, coming over to North America. He's been okay in a backup role. Ryan Pulock, Adam Pelech, Scott Mayfield. These aren't household names on the back end, but they get the job done. Noah Dobson scores a goal last night. He's starting to find his game as a bottom pair defenseman with Andy Green, the good veteran. Jordan Eberle still scores. Anders Lee is a guy who doesn't get in a lot of notoriety because he's an Islander and he's not in the limelight. But again, after a terrible start, this team just continues to find ways to win, and it's by committee. Again, Matt Martin has 5 goals on the season. Yeah, it's not a whole lot, but he's doing his job, and kudos to him. And they're in first. They're 2 points ahead of the Washington Capitals. They've had a weird season too because they've had COVID problems. Ilya Samsonov could hardly played until about 2 weeks ago. He's made 5 starts on the season. Vitek Vanacek's really stepped up in his absence. They've had Alex Ovechkin's had a little bit of a down year, but they're 2 points behind the Islanders. They're second in the toughest division in hockey. They beat Philly last night. Again, I don't like to kick teams when they're down. I don't like doing it. I know it may seem like I do on this podcast, but Philly is a team that had high expectations. They got an older roster. Giroux and Voracek are 2 names that get thrown around a lot in the medias. Great team guys and, really good players. And, Claude Giroux, he has been a really good player. Past couple but for a while now, he has not been an elite player. For the past year and change, 2 years, he's just been a guy. He's a jag, just a guy. And Washington beats Philly 5-3 last night, again by a committee of goal scorers. Washington now 3-0 since Tom Wilson's suspension. So fuck you, NHL. And with the key theme, Philly comes back, beats New Jersey the other night, trailing 4-1. They bring Brian Elliott in to replace Carter Hart. Elliott gets to start last night. He gives up another 4 spot. They lose the game. Philly needs to get one of those tutorials that they give to initiation kids on how to make a save. Just simply, how do you save a puck? Because Carter Hart and Brian Elliott can't do it right now. It's getting so pathetic. These guys, some of the goals that are going in, Carter Hart's confidence has to be at a -10, especially with getting pulled again, them going with Elliott against Washington, a rival. And, with the loss, they're now 3 points behind Pittsburgh for the final spot in the East Division playoffs. They need to turn it around here. They need to find it soon because this division will leave you behind. Pittsburgh, they're getting wins. They're playing lesser teams in the division. They beat Philly last week, but they're playing Buffalo last night. They're taking advantage against the teams they should beat. But for Philadelphia, I've talked about this with Craig about under review. I don't care what Carter Hart's prospects are and that he should be an Olympic team goaltender and all, yada, yada, yada. That's people talking. I'm talking about what's on the ice, and the product right now sucks, point blank. And it's simply not good enough. He might play on the Olympic team. Who knows? That's in 2022. Right now, if this team doesn't make the playoffs, I think it gets blown up. It's Calgary of the West, where if Calgary doesn't make the playoffs, changes are going to happen. I would not fire Vigneault. I don't think he's been the problem. I mean, they get some bad luck. They lose Matt Niskanen, who just retires abruptly. He was a really good fit with Provorov. Provorov's a really good defenseman, taking a little bit of a step back. Sanheim, Philip Myers, they're good players. I think both of them have kind of taken a step back this year. That's just, I think that's apparent. But the simplest thing you can say, and again, it's like a quarterback. You don't have a chance to win if you don't have at least an adequate quarterback in the NFL. Well, in the NHL, if you don't have good goaltending, you're fucked. I don't care how much skill you have. You can have Connor McDavid, Matthews, all these players on the same team. If you got a guy in net who can't save the puck, you're done. And in Philly right now, night in, night out, they're giving up a 5 spot. You're not winning many games giving up 5 goals. I mean, they had to beat New Jersey 5-4, trailing 4-1. That tells you all you need to know. New Jersey's no good. So Carter Hart, Brian Elliott, you need to find it. And for Philly, for Vigneault, I don't know. You just go to Carter Hart and say, you just got to be better. I don't know what you got to do for his confidence, but this isn't Adam Reck. You're in the NHL. Figure it out. Goalie coach, I don't know, fire some freaking tennis balls at him out in the driveway, because it's getting to the point now where Pittsburgh is playing good hockey. They're winning. They're probably not going to hit a ditch here and just, let you come back and, okay, we'll take the 4 spot. We don't really want to make it anyway. That's not the MO of the Pittsburgh Penguins. They're winners. They're Stanley Cup winners. If they see, a neck to step on, they're going to do it. And for Philly, if this core really enjoys playing together, I advise them they start winning, because if not, you're not going to be playing with each other next year and beyond. And get some breaking news that I'll get to here on the podcast. But, I like to think that I motivate some people on this podcast. And I think I did, bulletin board material for the Boston Bruins on under review in here. David Krejci and Jake DeBrusk both scored goals last night. How do you like me now? I mean, David Krejci's been doing nothing for all season, either injured or just not providing offense. Jake DeBrusk coming off a healthy scratch Tuesday night. they both had a goal last night in Boston's 4-0 ass whipping of the New York Rangers. So I'll give myself the credit for that. I'm motivating these guys. I'm not kicking you while you're down. I'm just saying, I know you're better players. Go out and prove it. And Boston they lose to the Islanders in the gimmick Tuesday night. They come back with a big win last night in New York. But for Boston to be a Stanley Cup contender, they need Krejci to be that number 2 center. They need DeBrus to be that second line winger that they hope to be, that they hope him to be. I think he could still be moved if they could find a hockey trade that made sense with another team for a player that could be on the roster right now, because obviously they're not a team that's looking to rebuild or just stay where they are. They want to get better. But good on DeBrus, good on Krejci for getting on the board. It shouldn't have took you this long, so I'm not going to congratulate you, I guess, because you should have been producing. But maybe this gets them off the schneid and get some Boston playing at an elite level, because other than the perfection line, they've been pretty quiet when it comes to production. Staying in Boston, I just said breaking news, and just coming up on my phone here, Cam Newton, the former quarterback of the Carolina Panthers, went to the New England Patriots last year. He is re-signing in New England on a 1-year deal. That's what Mike Reese just confirmed. He wants to. He said he's tired of change. He wants to stay in the same place. He's going to stay a New England Patriot. My initial reaction, I'm a little bit surprised. At the end of the year, he wasn't playing well. It looked like he would be moving on. Just the year wasn't great for him. He can't throw the ball. He only had 10 touchdown passes all of last year, which was the worst for any starting quarterback in the NFL. He's 30. He'll be 32 in May. For New England, he can't be their starting quarterback again. If he is, that's got to be so disheartening for Patriots fans. But they don't have a pick in the top 15, and that looks like about where all the quarterbacks are going to go in the draft. So this tells me he is their kind of bridge starter if they need him to be again. But I still think New England has their eyes on Jimmy Garoppolo. He was obviously a second-round pick of the Patriots 7 years ago now. When Brady was still there, they had him under Brady. Belichick, it's been reported and pretty much confirmed, he wanted to move on from Tom Brady. Tom Brady heard about this, went up to Bobby Kraft's office. Bob Kraft vetoed it, and they traded Jimmy Garoppolo from the Patriots to San Francisco for basically nothing. Gave him a silver platter for Garoppolo to go play under Kyle Shanahan, who Bill Belichick has a ton of respect for. And I think, he knew that Jimmy would succeed there. And, it's been a mixed bag. First year, his third start, Garoppolo blows out his knee, torn ACL, done for the year. Next season, they have a great team. They're 14-2. They get to the Super Bowl. He's a completed pass to Emmanuel Sanders away from winning the Super Bowl. Overthrew him by 5 yards. They lose to the Chiefs. This past year, Garoppolo misses half the season with injury. San Francisco misses the playoffs. Garoppolo is a efficient quarterback when he stays healthy. But, we've seen a whole bunch of quarterback turnover. Does San Francisco want to get involved in that? John Lynch has come out and said, I'm not trading Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't believe anything an executive says this time of year. You got free agency, you got the draft, you got potential trades. So I think anything's on the table right now. In some mock drafts, Mel Kiper's, they had San Francisco trading up to top 12 pick, selecting Alabama quarterback Mac Jones. Obviously that's just a mock draft. That's a prediction, but it wouldn't surprise me to see San Francisco take a quarterback. Do they want to look at different options? Is Teddy Bridgewater a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo? To me, he isn't. He's still under contract, but in Carolina right now. But what do they do? What do they do there? But for New England, they get Cam Newton back. Again, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is who they want. It's never been the MO for New England to trade up in the draft to select a quarterback. Maybe Bill Belichick, breaks the mold and he says, I really like Trey Lance from North Dakota State, or Zach Wilson if they could get him from the Jets, or what have you. Maybe that he likes that. Mac Jones, maybe he really likes Mac Jones. Some people are comparing Mac Jones as a little bit more athletic version of Tom Brady. So a lot of different options for New England, but an interesting signing. He would have been a guy. They haven't announced the financial side of it yet. I can't imagine it's too much money. He played for $1.5 million last year with incentives, based on his play, the productivity and the team going 7-9. I can't see him making much more than that this year. But interesting, another guy off the board when it comes to free agency. He's a guy that is a former MVP in 2015, but with multiple injuries, shoulders, knees, back, he's not the same player he once was. And for New England fans, they got to hope that he is the veteran backup that they trust. Brian Hoyer's a free agent. They still have Jared Stidham under contract, but he's not the answer long term there for sure. But New England makes a move, signing Cam Newton, and with free agency starting on Tuesday, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Let's talk in NHL before I get the breaking news, so I'll get back to that here briefly. Last night, Jordan Binnington, the Stanley Cup winning goaltender for the St. Louis Blues, was re-signed. He got a 6-year deal at $6 million per. I liked what they did. They won the cup. He was on an expiring contract. They signed him to a 2-year deal when he was a restricted free agent. Limited money. They wanted to see what he could do. Last year, he was solid. Okay. He still had Jake Allen there. He struggled a bit in the playoffs, but, overall solid. This year to start, I think he's been pretty fantastic for St. Louis. They look like a good team. I think he's in the Vezina discussion to start the year. And if you look at the going rate, Jacob Markstrom this past offseason got a 6-year deal at $6 million per. And, he was a great goalie in Vancouver. Really solid from the MVP of that team for, bar none, the past couple seasons. But, Markstrom never won a cup. Never got to a conference final as a starting goaltender. And, Binnington can still say, I'm a Stanley Cup winning goaltender. He's like Matt Murray. Matt Murray signed for $61.25 million. He's won a couple cups. He's got that in his resume. And for St. Louis, what's the alternative? I don't think there's a great one. Marc-Andre Fleury's under contract. Robin Leonard, just got signed. There's not a goalie. We've been talking about teams wanting to upgrade their goaltending position. It's tough. Quick's going to be a free agent, but he's on the back nine of his career. Binnington's still in his prime. St. Louis views their windows as a number of years to really compete for a title. I think it makes all the sense in the world for St. Louis and Binnington to do this deal. Binnington won the cup in St. Louis. They gave him that opportunity. He's been through a ton of playing in the AHL, playing in the coast, having to play AHL in Providence for Boston's affiliate. But this is a good story. I think it's a good contract. Again, goalies are going to get paid. I think for a long time, you see the Bobrovsky contract, you're like, oh, that hurts. And you see the Price contract at 10, you're like, ugh, that's a bit iffy. But, skaters are making 11 million, 10.5 million, Mitch Marner, these guys. Goaltenders got to make money too. It's the most important position on the team. And again, like I said in yesterday's podcast, and just being to the point, you're worth what someone is willing to pay you. And St. Louis thought Jordan Binnington was worth the 6 years commitment with the $6 million tied to it. So kudos to him. And I think the team is making a correct decision, signing up, getting their guy long-term in net, and having that stability with a youngster like Ville Husso to back him up moving forward. Yesterday, it was the start of one of the biggest golf events of the year, the Players Championship. It's not a major, but it's kind of seen as the biggest tournament outside of a major, at least real close to it. The best players in the world come to play here at the Players. And we saw some big names yesterday. And I'll start off by talking about guys who had terrible days. Rory McIlroy. Rory last week at the Arnold Palmy played great Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just completely lost his confidence, could not get a driver on the fairway, was a mess. That carried over. Shot 7 over yesterday in the first round, could not find a fairway, hitting it in the rough, hitting it in the water. It was an ugly day for Rory McIlroy. Just this course looks beautiful. I mean, I think you can say that every weekend, but this course is beautiful, but it's a tough course. There's bunkers in the middle of fairways. It's surrounded by a ton of water. It's right off the Atlantic Ocean. And with the wind and, trying to get over water, it's not an easy course, and it will chew you up. And it did to a bunch of guys yesterday. Tony Finau, a guy who's a perennial top 5 contender in pretty much every event he's in, never wins, but he's always there. He shoots 6 over yesterday. He's right there with Rory, struggling, likely going to miss the cut unless he really scrambles and has a great day. Xander Schofley, another, he's ranked really highly. He's always in contention at these events. He shoots 4 over. Again, he's going to have a special day to make the cut. Zach Johnson, playing one of the featured groups in the afternoon, he goes 3 over. And then looking at the top of the leaderboard, the players that are playing the best are guys who played really well last weekend, and the outlier is Sergio Garcia. Sergio Garcia is an older guy, but he won the Masters a few years ago. Since then, really hasn't done a lot on the tour, but he shoots 7 over to lead the tournament after Thursday. Now, do I think Sergio is going to win the Players Championship? No. He had a really fantastic day, but kudos to him for shooting 7 over on a really tough course. I mean, we saw Dustin Johnson shoot 1 under. Sergio shot 6 shots better than DJ yesterday, than Justin Thomas, than a bunch of really good players. So for him, he's not a guy who hits it really, really far, but the difference was he kept it on the fairway. His approach shots were dynamite, and he made his putts. Right below him, Canadian Corey Connors. Corey Connors had the lead after 2 days last week at the Arnold Palmer, but he shoots 5 under, really solid day. He's playing some consistent golf. And, he's been a guy that's hovered around. At the PGA last year, he finished in the top 5, top 5 finish at a major. He's been a good golfer, and coming off a good week last week, we haven't seen him slide and miss the cut like, Patrick Reed did after winning a tournament a couple weeks ago. Right. Bryson DeChambeau, obviously the winner of the Arnold Palmer, shoots 3 under. Solid day. Again, you're 4 strokes behind, but you can make that up. And, after winning a tournament, we see a lot of guys struggle. Either they might make the cut, just, limp in and then play the other 2 days where it doesn't mean anything. And that could happen to Bryson today. Don't get me wrong. To start off the tournament 3 under puts him in good position. And, the guy who finished second at the Arnold Palmer, finishing second to Bryson, Lee Westwood, also shoots 3 under. So the guys who are just coming off a tournament where they had success, it's carried over, and they're playing some good golf here. But it's a beautiful location. It's going to be on all weekend. I know I'm going to have it on my queue. Should be a lot of fun. You got, this weekend you got hockey, you got basketball, you got the Players Championship, you got a UFC event, you have the NCAA tournaments, ACC, Big East, you got the Big 10, Big 12 prior to March Madness. It's loaded. Curling. It's going to be a lot of fun this weekend. And I'll wrap up the show talking about curling. The top 8 teams are now set. We got Kevin Cooey's team leading the pack at 7-1, followed by Glenn Howard's team at also 7-1. And then 4 teams at 6-2, Ontario, Brad Gushu and Team Canada, Matt Dunstone, Saskatchewan, Brandon Botcher with Alberta at 6-2, and then bringing out the pack, Manitoba with Gunlickson and Brad Jacobs at Northern Ontario, sitting at 5-3. So how it works now is these 8 teams, they play teams 4 times. The 3 teams with the best record advance to Sunday. the team with the best record automatically gets a spot in the gold medal game. The two semifinalists will play each other in the afternoon. They play the winner in the final on Sunday. And high stakes. You get Olympic trials, and it was announced last week that we're going to see a men's and women's world curling. I didn't think that would happen, but it should happen this year. It's going to happen at this Calgary bubble. We're going to see teams from around the world come and play. So exciting stuff. The curling's been great so far. New Brunswick just missing out on the championship rounds by a game, but good showing by James Grattan. There's a lot elite curlers here, and he hung around there, finishing with a 5-3 record. So kudos to him and everybody involved here. But that's another thing to keep an eye on this weekend. And I mentioned the NCAA tournament. With Duke, they had to cancel their quarterfinal game yesterday because of a player testing positive for COVID. How's that for 2020 or 2020, 2021? So they're going to be out of March Madness for the first time in 24 years. Duke is like the Dallas Cowboys or the Toronto Maple Leafs in their respective sports, and they're not going to be in the tournament. And Kentucky, it's a strange year in college basketball. You got the Big Ten, which is normally a football school, really dominating the hoops with Illinois and Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa, Purdue. So tournament starts up a week from today. It's always a lot of fun. Even without fans, one of the best sporting events of the year, bar none. A lot to get through today, a lot of hockey. I'll be back this afternoon. I'm going to be talking with my friend Aaron Brown. We're going to talk about the Canadian division. He's a former defenseman. We're going to rank the top 3 defensemen in the division, talk about some goaltending around the league, and just go over the NHL as a whole. Sunday, I'm going to be joined by my good friend Adam Beers. He's been on the podcast before. We're going to talk about NFL free agency, get you guys a little primer for what players could be on the move, make some predictions on quarterbacks, things of that nature. So stay tuned for that. And then more content coming next week when it comes to March Madness and everything else that we have going on here at To The Point. As always, thank you guys so much for listening, for all the constant support. I really appreciate it. Have a great weekend and take care.